Hello and welcome to the page of the National Museum here on Facebook. We are celebrating Museums Week. We are on the second last day of the week and our prompt is technology. International Museum Day is on the 18th of May and that is what we are going to celebrate on Monday. The prompt for us today, being technology, also coincides with the celebration of another day today, which is the International Day of Light. And therefore, we thought, why shouldn't we bring together this video for you, bringing out some of the highlights of exhibits in the National Museum which are connected to light, light technology, as well as technological advancements in India. Now, you must be aware of the fact that humans discovered light or fire by chance. It's only much later do they learn how to consciously use it for their benefit. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to locate where the first lamp was used in the history of mankind. But we definitely know for a fact that there have been various civilizations and people around the globe that have used lamp in various forms. Initially, most of these sources would have been natural, such as coconuts or carved stones. Speaking of carved stones, in the National Museum, we also have an exhibit which is actually a lamp which has been carved out of stone. It dates back to the 12th, 13th century and is from Iran. Let me show you a photo of it right here for your reference. There it is. So you can't understand the scale of it from this photograph, but I suggest you go to the National Museum website and actually look up and take in more details about its dimensions. So it gives you a better idea about the scale of the lamp right here. Probably one of the oldest artifacts that we have in the National Museum is a terracotta statue which is named as Mother Goddess. And if you've been to the National Museum, or if you remember whatever you have studied of the Harappan civilization, you would recollect Mother Goddess is a terracotta statue which has a headgear, which has bowl-like structures on either side. When it was excavated, they found black remains of soot right there, and the conjecture is that probably that headgear was being used as lamps. And I have a photo of Mother Goddess right here for you to actually get another idea of what she looks like. So the bowl-like features on both the sides that you see right here is what I was talking about. On the other side, what you see here is another terracotta lamp from the 20th century from Surat in Gujarat. Now, having shown you these two terracotta artifacts, we have to understand that terracotta has been around for a very, very long time, and it's not that it's extinct now. People are still using it, and it's used across the country for various reasons. All our Diwali diyas are the small diyas which are made out of terracotta. So you have the Mother Goddess and the terracotta lamp from Surat. Another very exciting feature or artifact that is quite synonym with the National Museum is that of the dancing girl. The reason why the dancing girl is so popular is because, one, its size, it's a really small exhibit. The other thing is that the process that has been used to actually make the dancing girl, the statue of the dancing girl, that process is known as the lost wax process. The name is self-explanatory. You lose the wax in the process. But it's not a dead process. It is something that is still continuing to be used, that is still being continued to be used in India, especially in parts of Orissa and Chhattisgarh, where it is known as the Dhokra art. Now, again, here is an image of the dancing girl for you. So you can see the dancing girl right here, and the other two artifacts on this side, the one on the top and one at the below one, both of them are Dokra art lamps uh, which have come to the National Museum from Orissa. They belong to the Khond tribes of Orissa. The lamp on the top is a circular feature which has three lamps on top. The lower image is of a bigger circular sort of a thick barrel sort of a thing, which has an open winged bird at one end and the lamp in the center. So you have the lamp right there, you have the lamp right on top, and that's the bird with the open wings on the other side. So the lost wax process, how do you make these things with the lost wax process? What is done is that whatever is to be created, whichever artifact is to be created, that is molded out with wax first, and that wax is then layered or covered with wet clay. So it's not baked clay, but wet clay is covered over the wax, and there are holes pierced through this wet clay. Then the clay is baked in the oven, and what happens while baking is that the temperature is very high for the clay to convert into terracotta, and that's why the wax melts and it pours out from the holes that have been inserted into the earlier wet clay. Once the clay is baked, you get a hollow terracotta mold in which bronze is poured and set to form the artifact. Now, why is this process so interesting and important is because of the fact that bronze has two alloys and they have to be mixed together at a certain temperature, which gives the liquid consistency of bronze. When you're pouring that liquid into this mold, your temperature has to be at the right consistency, or else the mold can burst and you can hurt yourself. Now, we say that it is important for us to know about this fact is because the people in the Harappan civilization knew exactly how to attain that level, those temperatures, and that's the reason why they were able to make bronze statues like the dancing girl. And that actually speaks about the technological advancement right in the time of the Harappan civilization. Another very interesting feature from a different part of the country, you might have heard of it, you might have seen it, you might own a piece in that art form. It is known as the Bidri ware or the Bidri work, coming in from a town in Karnataka called Bidar. Now, you might be familiar with this work, and that's the image of two artifacts from the National Museum. Both of them are candle stands, and they're black colored artifacts with very bright shining silver work in the center. All the design, all the pattern is done with silver. Now, how does that work out? In Bidar, what they do is to make these artifacts, 95% zinc is mixed with 5% copper to form a very liquid consistency metal that is then molded and casted into the required shape. Once you attain that particular shape, a very sharp chisel is used with a hammer to actually carve out the decoration that you need in that particular artifact, followed by which it is inlaid with silver wire. A pure silver wire is inlaid throughout the patterns, and then it's buffed smooth to give the artifact a clear finish. But it doesn't end there. Till this time, it is a silver colored artifact with silver work on it, and therefore there is no contrast for you to actually see the vibrancy of the silver inlay work in the artifact. Now, what happens is aluminum chloride in a powdered form is mixed with the soil that is collected from the Bidar fort, and it is boiled together, and then the artifact, which has been completed with the inlay work is dipped and rolled into it for a bit. What happens by that is that helps in the oxidization process, and the moment the oxidization takes place, the earlier silver ware is completely turned into black. Now, the soil that is available at the Bidar Fort plays a very important role in actually getting that consistency and being that oxidizing agent for the artifact. And that is the reason why you can't actually achieve what you achieve in Bidar in terms of the Bidri work. And that is also the reason why it is known as Bidri work, because it is from Bidar. Here is another look at the image. I don't know if you can see it very well, but you can see the detailing. You can go up on to the National Museum website and have a look at. There are some other spectacular exhibits for Bidar ware as well. Now, going to a different part or towards the southern part of the country, we have a lot of brass casting and molding that takes place as well. What is happening is the next three exhibits that I'm going to show you are known as Deep Lakshmis. The moment you see the exhibits, you'll immediately know why they are called so. So here are the three examples of what is known as Deep Lakshmis from the National Museum collection. When you look at them, they are all figures of ladies. One of them is on an elephant in the center, one is on a pedestal on the left right here. But what is common in all three of them is that they're all three holding a lamp or a diya in their hand. That is precisely the reason why they are known as Deep Lakshmis. Now these brass Deep Lakshmis are coming in from the southern part of the country, and the brass casting is very similar to that of the Bidri work casting, or forming a mold, a cast, and then making a statue out of it. What also happens is that these are smaller examples, but in terms of bigger artifacts and bigger statues that are being created of brass, they are usually done in bits and pieces, and then all the pieces are soldered together for it to form the big complete image that you have. Another two examples that I have for you are of two lamps, one from Kashmir, which is a metal lamp which has a beautiful inlay work on it. The other one is a copper lamp from Bihar, which is a hanging oil lamp. Now here is an image of both these lamps, you can see. So this one here is from Kashmir with detailed inlay work on it of semi-precious stones, and this one here is the lamp from Bihar, which is an oil lamp, a hanging oil lamp, and you can see the hanging contraption on it very clearly. Apart from these lamps, you also had a lot of lamps which were being used in Buddhist monasteries and Buddhist temples, and these interestingly are called as butter lamps. Now, why would you call the lamps as butter lamp? Now, the reason behind them being called butter lamps is because they were using the milk of the yak to produce the butter that was then being used in these lamps in the temples and monasteries. The idea of these lamps is to help the devotees to concentrate, to view in a particular direction, to cleanse their heart, and that is what you can see right here. These are the three examples. They're from Tibet, and you can actually have a look at a lot more of these artifacts on the National Museum website. Now, apart from these, you also had lamps which were just being used for ceremonial purposes or for ritualistic purposes, like the Aarti lamps or probably some that you would probably have just for a special occasion, something that you would offer to a god on a special occasion. And we have a lot of those examples as well. So my last slide here, or the last few images that I'm showing you, are basically one of a lamp, that is a ritual lamp which is offered to deities during a particular ritual, which has, when you see the photo, you see a lot of holes in it. They're all for wicks for multiple lights to be lit from there. Just below it is the lamp, which is one of the most spectacular one, because this is a very rare lamp, simply because of the reason of the metal that has been used for its making. That is the Gajalakshmi lamp right here at the base, which is completely made out of gold. And this is the ceremonious ritual lamp that I'm mentioning, with multiple holes in it. That's an Aarti lamp, of course, and another lamp right at the base. So you have these four very unique lamps. You can read more about them. You can read about a lot of other lamps which are available at the National Museum as well. My name is Jaya, and it has been a pleasure showing you some of the exhibits of the National Museum which showcase light and technology both. Hope you have a very good weekend. Take care of yourselves and stay home. See you. Bye-bye.